An advisor's business can stay active long enough to look like it's working. That's what makes this dangerous. You're winning business, so from your seat, it feels like everything is working. But the problem isn't that opportunity keeps moving. It always does. The real problem is when it moves through more people and more handoffs than the business was ever built to carry. So it keeps depending on informal coordination to hold together. Most advisors miss that. They think they're watching growth. What they're actually watching is a business being held together by whoever keeps catching what the structure missed. And eventually, that breaks. I spent 23 years in wealth management as an advisor, leader, and executive, building and running multi-billion-dollar businesses. So what are we going to discuss today? About how an advisor can keep winning business while their actual client experience is being shaped entirely by other people's processes, timing, and standards. I'll show you exactly what gets missed when updates are constantly being chased, handoffs are unclear, and no one on your team has the same view of where the opportunity actually stands. Most importantly, I'll break down why active business motion can make you believe the structure is working, even when the delivery underneath it is already becoming less reliable. You don't see the coordination breaking down while it's happening. When you're closing business at this pace, the warning signs don't show up as a missed deadline or an angry email. They show up as normal, everyday moments that look entirely fine on their own. So let's talk about exactly how this happens. Deals are moving, business is coming in, clients are getting won. From your seat, that feels like proof. You're doing what advisors do. Meeting prospects, working referral sources, getting the handshakes, keeping growth moving. That's the front end. That's exactly where you're supposed to be. But once opportunity enters your business, it stops living in your hands alone. It moves through other people's hands. Internal partners, specialists, support, service teams, each running their part a different way on a different timeline, with a different idea of what needs to happen next. At first, that just feels like normal complexity. More new business means more people involved. That's expected. That's what growth looks like. Then the strain starts showing up. People start tracking you down for updates because the pieces are scattered across processes you never connected to your own standard. Team members involved in the same piece of business aren't seeing it the same way. One thinks it's further along than it is. Another isn't clear on what's needed next. Another is waiting on someone else's part before they can move theirs. The business gets won, but information is still being chased down just to keep it moving forward. You have to reconstruct what's already happened just to answer a simple question. The client starts feeling the gap. Even if they never say it out loud, they just notice that things feel slower and less certain than they expected. You don't read any of this as a structural problem. You read it as normal friction. The deals keep closing, so closing is the proof you're watching. What you are watching is what happens to the relationship once it leaves the front end and starts moving through everyone else's version of how the business should run. That's where the fail starts landing. And the first place to look is not what broke around you, it is what you allowed the business to move through without enough structure of your own. So let's look at exactly where that structure failed. The first miss was how the business was allowed to move. Too much of the opportunity was being left to people figuring it out as they went. Who had the update? Who had the next step? Who knew what the client had been told? Who was supposed to catch it when something slowed down? None of that was clear enough. So the business kept depending on whoever happened to be paying attention that day. That's not structure. That's catch-up. The second miss was a false read. You mistook movement for control. You watched the deals close and read that as proof the business was working. But closing has never been the same thing as knowing where everything stands. The motion was real, the control was not. You were still winning business, so you kept trusting the motion. But once opportunity moved past the front-end conversation, too much of the experience was being shaped by other people's timing, handoffs, updates, and standards. That's where the business started separating from the way you thought it worked. Clients and COIs don't parse out which piece belonged to which department. Partners don't experience your business as separate processes. The market doesn't separate who caused the breakdown. They experience one thing, your business. And if you don't create enough structure around how that business should move, someone else's structure becomes your client experience. The third miss was how much of the experience was being saved after the fact. Someone had to remember. Someone had to chase the update. Someone had to catch it. Someone had to catch what almost got missed. And too often, that someone became you. That's why you became reactive. Not because you weren't working, not because you were careless, because the business kept moving in a way that made it harder for you to know where things actually stood. When someone wanted an update, you had to chase it. When a client wanted clarity, you had to reconstruct what happened. When something slowed down, you were reacting to the delay instead of directing the movement. The deeper problem was not inefficiency alone. The business was no longer being experienced as reliable. Visibility broke down. Partners were chasing you for updates instead of receiving them. Clients felt more uncertainty than expected. Confidence eroded quietly. The business was still getting won, but it was being experienced as chaotic underneath the wind. That's the part most advisors miss. UVAP business motion proved the structure was working. It didn't. The experience was being shaped by others. And your reputation took a quiet hit because you never pulled it back around your own credibility. Here's what that costs. You spend more time reacting than directing, answering for movement you aren't actually shaping, instead of setting the pace of it yourself. Your name is on the business, so when the experience breaks down, the accountability lands with you. Over time, you feel it in the place that matters most. Referrals become less fluid. COIs send business less frequently. New opportunity gets harder to move because the same people you're trying to win more business from already felt how inconsistent the last piece of business became once it left the front end. From there, you start absorbing the hit of an experience you were never fully controlling, not because you were not working hard enough, but because too much was moving through other people's way of working. Production may still be there, the revenue may still show up, but what built your reputation isn't what's carrying it anymore. This is not a story about one bad quarter. It's slower than that, quieter than that. It shows up as a CPA who used to send a referral without thinking twice, now thinking twice. Nothing dramatic, nothing that shows up on a production report right away. Just a book of business that used to move easily, starting to move a little harder, piece by piece. That's the day-to-day cost, but there's a bigger exposure underneath it. You don't get exposed only when opportunity stops. You get exposed when it's moving. But the business no longer moves cleanly enough to protect the client experience, the partner experience, and your own credibility. Your business could stay active, keep producing, and still be getting weaker in the way it moves long before you're willing to call it a problem. And by the time it becomes visible, the cost has been paid. The truest read of what your advisory business is worth was never the top line number. It's what someone sees when they lift the hood. Most advisors do not force that read early enough. And by the time you do, the business you thought you built and the business you actually built have already separated. At EliteVate, this is a line we watch closely. Because in a world full of information, people choose authority that protects them from being wrong at the most expensive moments. If your business is producing, but more of the experience depends on chasing, checking, and pulling pieces back together, that is worth looking at before the market prices it for you. If that sounds like your business, go to the EliteVate website and start with the advisor assessment. It's free and it only takes a few minutes. Every week I break down what's happening underneath successful advisor businesses before it becomes visible to everyone else. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. This is EliteVate.